This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. This is episode 1 of a new series called Good Food Revelations. It gives me great pleasure to be joined today by integrated health practitioner Jill Bucaro, who is joining us all the way from Los Angeles. Jill is the woman behind Wellness Riot. How are you today, Jill?
I'm so good. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you very much. We are going to be doing a rather seasonal episode to kick things off and speak about holiday overindulgence. Why do we overindulge so much during the holiday season?
That's a really good question. I think that we're presented with a lot of opportunities to overindulge. And I think that it's, almost 2 months, really, 6 solid weeks of like leading up to Thanksgiving and then leading up to, Christmas, or if you celebrate Hanukkah, and then, the New Year. And our levels of stress are high. We're very tight for time. So I don't think we, always have time or energy to make good decisions as far as, being healthy, going to the gym, right? There's always an office party, a community event, whatever it is. And it just seems to string along, right? Like the whole 6 weeks. But I think we're presented with more opportunities to overindulge than we are most other times of the year, all within 4 to 6 weeks.
Right. I was forgetting that your Thanksgiving is closer to Christmas, right? So our Thanksgiving is always a lot earlier up in Canada. Now, I was just reading that during the week between Christmas and New Year, the average Brit puts on 6 pounds, 2.71 kilograms. What do you think of that? And the average Brit takes 3 months to work that off, that weight they put on between Christmas and New Year.
I'm surprised it's that much in just that span of time, but I guess, depending on what holidays you celebrate, I think in the US, I don't know what the stats are, but my guess is that within that 4 to 6 weeks, it would be something like, 6 to 10 pounds. But that it's in that 1 week. Do people take vacation? Do they vacation a lot in during that time? I would think eating leftovers, maybe prepping for, after school or after the holiday shopping, prepping for New Year's. But that's interesting in that 1 week, that short week, that's a lot.
Well, I mean, coming from the UK myself, Christmas is, a lot of it is about food. And my Christmas and New Year are centered around food, and wine is food for me. So, but alcohol and food. So here's a question for you. What do you know about the brain mechanism that makes us feel hungry, and then the brain mechanism that tells us it's time to stop eating?
So that's a good question. So there's a couple of things. So we have all sorts of sensors and receptors in our digestive tract that communicate to our brain we're either hungry or full. And it's hormones, and it's our microbiome, meaning like the bacteria in our gut. And there's also nutrient sensors and volume sensors. So if we eat say a big salad or something like that, right? It's a lot of volume, right? So, and usually a lot of nutrients. So when we eat that, our body's like, okay, we got the nutrients we need, or we're full. I mean, we're physically full, right? And so we can stop eating. So wherever that happens in the digestive process, all through our gut, we have these signals that go to our brain that tell us to stop eating. When we eat something like a candy bar or a bowl of chips or something like that, alcohol, none of those triggers get tripped. We're not getting the nutrients, and it's not really that much volume, right? I think 100 calories of oil is like a tablespoon, and 100 calories of kale is or broccoli is 8 cups, right? So we're not tripping the triggers, and so we're not getting that message to our brain. So our brain is oh, I guess I should remain hungry, because my body's telling me I didn't get the nutrients that I needed, or I'm not full. I didn't get the volume of food that I needed. So those are a couple of things that I think that I think are at play that we don't even realize, right? And so if you eat really fast, you probably know what that is like, right? You eat, you're starving, so you scarf down your meal, and then you're 10 minutes later, you're why did I eat so much, right? So you didn't give your body, your gut, time to talk to your brain, right? It's oh my God, this influx of food. And then by the time you tell your brain you're full, you've already overindulged, right? But could you eat a whole bowl of plain potatoes, with no butter, no salt, no, I mean, there's just no way, right? But you could eat the equivalent in chips or fries because
Right.
it's got that oil and the salt and, whatever flavorings, right? So those are a couple of reasons that, we can overindulge. It's like what we're eating and then what we're signaling. And honestly, eating fast is huge, almost no matter what you're eating. If we chew our food, I mean chew like 20 to 30 chews
Right.
per bite of food. Um, One, it's easier on our stomach, and two, it gives our body time to tell our brain to stop eating, because it takes time to chew 20 or 30 times versus, bite, bite, swallow, chew, chew, swallow, which is what most of us do. So those are a couple ways to get around it. If you chew your food, you will hardly ever overeat.
Yeah, I mean, if you're chewing your food 20 times for each mouthful, that's going to be a long dinner.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. But it's going to give you, you're not going to be you're not going to be short on nutrients. You're just going to eat the amount of food that you need and not too much.
Now, it was my understanding that these receptors in our digestive tract that pick up the levels of salts, sugars, and the like, and tell us that we're hungry and that we should eat, um, those don't actually come into play that much when it comes to a feeling of fullness, simply because it would take up to 30 minutes for a lot of that to be absorbed into the bloodstream from a meal. And it
Mhm.
was my understanding that there was a process in the brain whereby your brain predicts when you're going to be full based upon past experience. But there are lots of things that can really fog up this prediction: alcohol, boredom, anxiety, excitement, and the like. And I was thinking that perhaps this was something to do with the overindulgence that many of us do over the festive season.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that can hijack even what I talked about, and
Mm,
then adding on what you talked about. There's a lot of things that can hijack, and they're called hyper palatable foods. So that's one. So those really salty, sugary, that perfect blend of oils and fat and texture. Like if you think of those things that are like kind of melt in your mouth, like at all the big food companies, there are multiple people that are working full time to make food as palatable as possible. Like you can eat the whole bag of chips, right? So there's those kinds of chemicals and processing that can hijack, but also yes, absolutely, stress and digestion are hugely related. Our sleep, which oftentimes is connected to our stress, and then our hormone levels. There's hormones that tell us we're full, and there's hormones that tell us that we're hungry, and those can get totally messed up by, environmental stress, toxins, or physical, lack of movement, screen time. All of that kind of stuff can impact. And so it's really a challenge to know if you're truly hungry. I think if people really could feel hunger, they'd probably be surprised at what that feels like, because most of the time we eat because, oh, it's noon, or it's lunchtime, or I'm bored, or I need something to do with my hands, right? Or I'm craving, right? I have cravings. And that can come from an imbalance of hormones, that can come from an imbalance of the bacteria in our gut. There's literally different kinds of bacteria that crave different kinds of food. So you're almost not in charge in some instances of like what you're craving.
so there's a higher power that's making me overindulge. That's what you're talking about here.
Yes, you're no accountability.
So, what tips do you have for those who tend to overindulge over the festive season?
Okay, so one thing that I love to say is like, don't go to events starving. Like, I know it's, if you're going to dinner or you're going to a social event, there might be food there, but I always say like, don't go starving. Have a tiny bite to eat before you go to the event. And then you don't spend the whole time like controlling your hunger,
Mm.
or, indulging on the appetizers, or, like if you were at a restaurant, the chips and salsa or the bread basket, right? If you don't go starving, you can be more selective about what you have like at the event. So that's one I really like. The other is really communication. So if you're hosting an event, if you're going to an event, a guest, really communicating if you have dietary preferences you're trying to stick to, because a lot of us do a really good job like on the day to day, and then also it's just like we go nuts, in the holiday. And a lot of that has to do with events and like not communicating. So if I'm hosting, I will let everybody know like, here's what we're having. if you'd like to bring something else that fits, or if you can tell me what you do and don't eat, I'd be happy to modify. There's so many dietary preferences and food sensitivities and stuff like that. Most people, if they can accommodate, they want to, right? They want their guests to enjoy their time. But when you get to the event is not the time to say, oh, I don't eat any of this stuff, right? Or, just let your, I don't want to say diet, but let your normal eating go because you're like, well, this is all there is here. So communicating ahead of time can be really, if you're going to a restaurant, if you're going to a, friend or family member's house, you can kind of figure that out ahead of time. And then I love blaming your nutritionist, your doctor, your health coach, whoever. Like I tell all my clients, I'm like, just blame me if you want to. Like if you're trying to stay healthy, but they're like, come on, it's Christmas, come on, it's the holiday, come on, just have a drink, have a this, have a cookie, have a whatever. You can say, something like, I'd love to, but my trainer, my nutritionist has me, doing something for the next 3 weeks. What you can also do then is follow it up with like, and you know what, I actually feel pretty great and I don't want to ruin it, right? So you kind of like, it's not all drudgery, but if you're looking to kind of stay on path, that can be a helpful thing too.
Hydration is also very, very important, is it not?
It is very important, especially if you're indulging, in alcohol, like alternating or, sip or drink, making sure that you're hydrated. You're going to feel better the next day, but it's also good to hydrate in general. So it's kind of a win-win.
I have a very close friend who writes for the website actually, and he's ages with me. And I observed him recently. He drinks about the same amount as I do, and eats well. And I noticed that he has basically a pint of water every hour, which I was astonished. I don't have the discipline to do that, but I'm going to try.
You'll feel a lot better when you wake up the next day and you're like, oh, I feel pretty good. It might be motivation. Not to say if you wake up bad, but it will really help if you feel good.
Now, just say I've overindulged, and as I am wont to do, unfortunately, I should be asking you, because you're an expert in this field, what is the best hangover cure you have ever heard of?
One of my favorites is activated charcoal.
Okay.
Are you familiar?
Yeah. I've never actually eaten it, but.
Yeah. So it's just, you can buy it at any store that sells supplements or has a vitamin department. And it's very inexpensive and it's really works like a sponge. So it kind of soaks up all the gunk, and which could be liquor, even if you had like a really heavy meal or like you overindulged in sweets, and you just get that really heavy feeling. Activated charcoal can be helpful. It works. It's capsules.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. They sell it in powder and you can put it in capsules, but I found that to be quite messy. It's like black everywhere. So just buy the capsules. They're much neater. And so that can be just kind of a quick, usually for me, it works within like 15 to 30 minutes. I start to feel like a sense of relief and just kind of a little clearing, a little lighter feeling. So that can be good. More water is really good. If you can, chill out. If you can eat something, I don't want to say go carb heavy, but something kind of plain and not too heavy can be helpful too.
Is this something that one would take before you go to bed or the next morning?
You can take it either time, the activated charcoal. Yes. The only thing I would caution you is don't take it regularly or in anticipation of, because if you take it, say with a supplement or with your meal, it's kind of non-discrete. So it's going to absorb everything. So if you eat a healthy meal and you take activated charcoal, it may pull some of the nutrients along with the bad stuff that you're trying to get rid of. So there can be definite benefits to activated charcoal. I just don't want to encourage people I just take it every day. It's you might miss out on absorbing the stuff that you're actually eating that you want to absorb.
Interesting. Now, on a closing note, what is your kryptonite when it comes to overindulging over the festive season? What is your vice when it comes to overindulging?
My vice? So for savory, I can almost never resist a chip, like a potato chip. Okay. And for sweet, ice cream. If there's ice cream or chips, those are just the two things I just really enjoy. And I would say too, ending with that, if you, regardless of what you indulge in, don't beat yourself up about it. Like that's the worst thing you can do is dive into like the tower of candy bars and then just spend like 2 weeks being like, why? Like, because the stress isn't going to help. So, if you can keep the indulgence to like the actual holiday, maybe a party or two before that or around that, like just enjoy it. If you take care of your body most of the time, when you don't, your body's there for you. Like it's very resilient. But don't beat yourself up. Enjoy it, move on.
Jill, thank you very much for joining us at Good Food Revolution once again. We look forward to catching up with you again next month.
Thank you. I love chatting about this.
Take care. Have a great festive season.
You too. Bye-bye.